Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and
Good
thank you
morning.
for your answer. And obviously, the PDM principles are fantastic and should be adhered to at all times. And you mentioned their impartiality, and that's one of the principles that the police should always constantly demonstrate impartiality to the law. But that hasn't been happening over the last 6 months, particularly in terms of protests and demonstrations and rallies. We do now have in London two-tier policing. And there are different approaches taken to Black Lives Matter protests and freedom rallies. Why is there a difference in the approach taken by police to these rallies?
I don't accept there is a difference. I think the police do police without fear or favour. The short answer to your question is actually looking at the circumstances at the time the Black Lives Matter protests were taking place and the circumstances now, but also the regulations and rules and the law as it was then and now. The police are quite clear in relation to treating everybody fairly and equally. But if there's been a difference over the last 9 months in relation to policing that's probably down to the rules and the law as they were at the time and the increase or decrease of the virus rather than partiality from the police.
Well, I'll give you an example, because on Monday this week, Monday the 14th of December, there was a freedom rally in Parliament Square, and the decision was taken to close it down. I was there to observe what was happening. But just a few days before, under the same regulations, on the 10th of December, there was a Black Lives Matter march through Tottenham, and they were given an escort by officers of the Metropolitan Police, despite them marching along the streets, chanting, "Take it to the streets, F the police." So there's a clear difference there. Can you explain that difference, Mr. Mayor?
I'm not aware of the two different cases, but what I suggest to the member, if he's unhappy with police conduct, he can make a complaint to the IOPC or raise it directly with the Commissioner. I'm simply not aware of the two marches or the differences between the two.
Well, I would like to ask you about your thoughts, even though you might not be aware, because on the 14th of December freedom rally that I mentioned, as was also the case on the 28th of November, where there was a large freedom rally in central London under different regulations, admittedly, there were, I think, actions taken which were appalling. I mean, you've often spoken about combating violence against women and girls, but it seems that the police tactic there were to push in snatch squads to pick on individual women, pull them off from the crowd, beat them to the ground, put handcuffs on them, surround them with 20 other police officers so no one could help women and girls with placards clearly in distress. I don't think that that is something that is going to sustain public support for the police. But what do you think about that police tactic, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I can't comment on the circumstances you've described, but what I can say is that in public order situations, there are experienced public order commanders on the ground. There's an experienced team working in the control room who can see the various CCTV options, and often for big demonstrations, there's also helicopters in the air as well. And the police do communicate with each other and often have to move swiftly in relation to an individual incident. I'm not sure about the example you're describing, but if there's a protest, you're unhappy at the way it's being policed, the sensible thing to do is to raise your concerns with the Commissioner or with the IOPC or at the Police and Crime Committee. You're in a privileged position, being one of 25 Assembly members who's got direct access to the Commissioner and her deputies. And so, I mean, what I'd encourage you to do, if you're unhappy with the way the police protest, please do raise it. Because it's important, as you say, that we police impartially, and I'm quite clear it's important police do so.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, and I have, and people that I know have raised things, but you are the Mayor of London, you are the Police Crime Commissioner for London, and you're paid £152,734 a year to do that job. So I would like to ask you something else before I finish my question, which is, I think, even more disturbing, because on the 14th of December, a protester was hit over the head by a baton. A policeman wielding a baton fell to the ground and was hit over the head again by that same policeman. There's clear footage of this happening. Do you ever think that it's right that a policeman should hit or try to punch someone in the face because that's a red zone? And obviously, if someone's hit over the head with a baton, they could die instantly. Is that ever acceptable, Mr. Mayor, do you think?
Well, you're raising a factual situation than asking a question that's hypothetical. Look, the police have got the equipment to keep themselves safe and to keep the public safe. That includes batons. And they also have, for example, some of the police use of taser as well. It's really important that police by consent, and the police, in the majority of times, do it in a peaceful way. Sometimes, unfortunately, there's a need to use force. I know the Commissioner is examining the use of force in relation to reviews she's undertaken. But I think, look, the police have to police impartially. They've got to police without fear or favour. They are one of the most scrutinised police forces in the world. I speak as somebody who's practiced in the area of law around police accountability, but also somebody who, as you remind me, is a police and crime commissioner. And if there are concerns that you have, or members of London have, or people visiting our city to protest have, then it's important they raise them through the various channels there are. That includes.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have. Sorry, I do have to cut you off. I don't have much more time. I am bringing them to you because you are in that position. I will also bring them to the Cressida Dick, obviously, and the various bodies that are there to scrutinise the police and take action as well.